everybody, it's Katie with Embody Daily, and I wanted to make a quick video today to talk about how our relationships can change when we are in sobriety or when we quit drinking, or even if we're on the Sinclair Method and we're greatly reducing how much we drink and we're changing our relationship to alcohol and becoming a different person, becoming more of who we are, how this whole experience of transition can impact our relationships. And I wanted to make this video because I was just on a coaching call with someone and she was saying, oh man, you're a year sober and you still like your husband even though you're sober now. And I think that is so funny because there's so much truth riddled in that. And so I wanted to just speak a little bit today about my experience with getting sober and how that has impacted my relationships in my life. So just to begin with, kind of reflecting back on the person I was. Let's see, I started the Sinclair Method almost 2.5 years ago, and I've been sober from alcohol now for about 1.5 years or so, give or take a few months. And so I was dependent on alcohol for 10 years before I got going on the Sinclair Method. And when I got dependent on alcohol, it was in my early 20s. And, you know, from my experience, what I've learned in getting sober and kind of overcoming this addiction is how much alcohol stunts your growth as a person. And for me, I was in my early 20s, and so I feel like there was a lot of self-development and self-knowledge and inquiry and values and all of these things that weren't yet kind of locked into me as a person, you know, what I valued, what integrity felt like, who I was, what I liked to do, what I didn't like to do. All of these things that just take time and self-exploration and awareness and a conscious state to really explore and go deep within yourself and get to know. That was stunted out of me because I started drinking heavily in my early 20s. And so I feel like even though 10 years passed, I was very much operating as I was dependent on alcohol in this insecure place where I didn't really know who I was. I didn't value myself. I didn't really know what I liked to do or not to do. And because I didn't have this intrinsic value in myself, you know, because we all are valuable simply by purely existing. That gives us all value. But for me, I always felt like I had to be doing something in order to get others' approval of me and kind of get that feedback on, hey, you did a good job. Hey, you know, you're worthy. Let's keep you around kind of thing. So I was constantly looking for that external validation from people when I was drinking because alcohol just kept me in this really insecure place. And that's kind of why I think that was an aspect of why I just perpetually drank so much, because I had so many insecurities that were kind of bubbling up at the surface that every day I would just kind of mask them back down with alcohol to cover them up because they were so uncomfortable. And alcohol really strips away your strength. You know, I've learned this so much in hindsight. It really took away my strength and my ability to cope. As humans, we are naturally equipped to be able to cope with challenging emotions, and we're designed to grow and evolve and get better and better. And alcohol really just prevented that and stunted that and kept me in this really insecure place. So it was just this constant cycle of feeling insecure and like crap on a daily basis. So I would drink and then I'd be sober and, you know, feel those insecurities and probably a hangover and just wondering when I could drink again. And meanwhile, you know, having myself in that alcohol fog all of the time just made me constantly looking outward for these validations and approvals from others and kind of putting myself in a subservient position to everybody, feeling like I didn't have a voice or an opinion to give. And so that is essentially how I showed up in relationships for 10 years. Now, granted, you know, it wasn't all bad. I've been a good friend, a good wife, a good sibling, all of these things to people, but it's really been this internal shift in me where I have seen so clearly how I was operating kind of out of integrity and again from this insecure place. And now that I'm out of that place, or, you know, like evolving out of it, being sober for this past 1.5 years or so, as I'm evolving as a person and getting to know myself on a deeper level and in a more true way, I've had to kind of readjust expectations in my relationships. And so as far as kind of readjusting expectations in my relationships, this has been one of the biggest growing pains for me of getting sober. And I think this is also an area perhaps that might, you know, perpetuate someone to continue drinking on the Sinclair Method more than they want to, because they might feel this kind of pressure from the outside world to conform to this person that they've always been, this role that they have taken on their whole life. So for example, with me, I hang out with friends. I think nearly all of them drink. I have kind of a newer group of friends now where they don't binge drink, or they're not like the typical party crowd that I was hanging out with before when I was drinking really heavily. But they do drink, and there was a certain expectation that was placed on me to drink. We would go to happy hours, we'd have parties at people's houses, and it was always expected that I would drink. And so even for a while on the Sinclair Method, I saw myself drinking at occasions, even though I didn't really want to, because the method was working so well and I would have been totally fine having coconut water or whatever. I would still continue to drink just to kind of, fit in with what these expectations were of me with the crowd. And so I think this is an area where people can get stuck on the Sinclair Method where, they might continue to drink, or they might still be drinking more than they want to, or, partying or drinking too much because of this expectation of who you have been all of these years that you've been drinking. And we've got to start to show up and reset and readjust these expectations. And the reason why this has been such a growing pain for me is because I almost feel like I was a fraud in a way. Like the person that I have been for the last decade of my life as I've been drinking, again, I was showing up from this kind of insecure place of not really knowing who I was and what I wanted. And so again, I was looking outside for this like validation from people. So I would be overly nice to people, overly giving to people, say yes no matter what somebody needed from me. And I would just do that so that I would feel worthy from something, get that feedback from people. And so as I've shifted being sober this past year, I've seen it really ripple out into my relationships. And it's been a challenging thing to kind of readjust these expectations where people expected me to be Katie who would go out and drink and party with them. People expected me to be Katie who would show up and help you move any day, even if it's raining and 6 a.m. People expected me to be, Katie who cooked dinner for you every single night, or who would do this and that for you, or, whatever. All of these kind of agreements I had laid out in my life from this drunken place, or this place of just being dependent on alcohol and feeling so insecure and so unworthy, because alcohol just keeps you stuck there. It's a trap. It keeps you stuck in this feeling of just lack and worthlessness. At least that was my experience. And different degrees for everybody, but it was there. And sometimes it was subtle and sometimes it was more extreme. So all this to say that I have had to readjust all of the expectations in my relationships, and that has been really challenging because, again, I felt like the person who I showed up to be, including, for example, in the relationship with my husband, we met right when I was in the midst of heavy drinking, almost five years ago or so. And when we met, I was still very much that person where I would cook us dinner every night, even if I was exhausted. I would clean up everything. I would do favors for him. I would do all of these things, even though he wasn't necessarily asking me to. It was my way of feeling validated. And so in our relationship, he's gotten used to me doing all of these things because it's been years where I was kind of doing all these things to kind of get his validation and love from me, even though it was always there, but that was on me kind of acting in this way because it was like almost manipulating the environment so that I could get that feedback, that positive feedback back from him and feel like, okay, I'm worthy another day, that kind of thing. But what has changed so much in getting sober is I no longer operate from that place of needing validation from the outside. I now feel so much more at peace and secure in who I am, and realize that I have value just by simply existing. And so in the example with my husband, it's been a case of me really needing to readjust the expectations and saying, okay, I'm not going to cook dinner every night anymore. I showed up and I was doing this for years in our relationship, but I don't feel like cooking dinner every night. And he's like, okay, I never asked you to. But it was like me putting that expectation on myself. And so same with like my family engagements. There's been this certain level of expectation for me to show up to certain family functions, even though they're in a totally different state and it costs me a lot of money to travel. And so I've kind of reset this expectation. Like, I'm going to come up, but like, I need help paying for a ticket, or if you want to see me, you need to come down and see me. And it's amazing how this has transformed things because as I have shown up more wholly and in tune with myself and more in integrity with who I am, others around me begin to bend and meld and adjust to me. And I had this fear about doing it that, oh, I'm not going to be liked, or I'm a different person, I'm a fraud. But everybody changes and everybody evolves. And the person I was 2.5 years ago, someone drinking a bottle of wine a night, that is not who I am. That was alcohol talking. That was alcohol feeding my insecurities. And the person I am today is more me than I've ever been before. And so, though it's been challenging and kind of a little bit scary to readjust these expectations, to witness it all kind of unfold before me has been a really, really beautiful experience. Like I said, like my husband, he's totally fine with me not cooking dinner every night. He cooks sometimes, or we just have snacks, or we eat out, and it makes me feel much more happy because I'm honoring what I want to do. And with my family, I don't feel as obligated to go to things because I've set those expectations with them and say, it's like too much for me to just keep showing up. And if you want me there, like help me out or come visit me. And that's readjusting expectations a bit. And even, with my friends having that expectation on me to drink, and now it's been over a year since I've drank, so nobody expects me to anymore. But honoring more of what I want in relationships. I've had friendships in the past where it was really just someone taking from me, and I would give because that was where I was getting my sense of validation and sense of worth. But now it's like readjusting those expectations. Like, look, can this be a two-sided conversation? Can you come help me sometimes? And it's been this amazing thing because your environment and your people around you, when you really step into your truth and claim who you are, even though it's scary to have these conversations and you might feel like a fraud or might feel like, oh my God, like I was kind of lying to them, or this isn't who they thought I was, and this is something I've personally been struggling with. But as I've kind of stepped into my truth and asked for what I want, everything shifts around me to meet who I am in my truth, and things start to flow more easily and just feel better for both parties. I'm no longer over giving in order to get validation, and I'm able to receive when someone can give to me and ask for it when I need it as well. So I wanted to just make this video quickly to talk about that because it's definitely something that's been up for me. I think I'm an idealist, and I definitely idealized sobriety and just thought everything would be like rainbows and butterflies and, oh, I'm not drinking, everything's going to be great. But it's been, of course, a huge growing experience and learning experience to kind of get more in tune with myself and get back in integrity with all these areas of my life where things have been out of integrity because I haven't been showing up as my whole authentic self. I was showing up as somebody who was addicted to alcohol and rather insecure and not sure of my worth and myself. And it took time, and it's taken time, and it still is, to kind of shift and adjust those expectations and even get to know what it is that I really want, what Katie really wants. Like, do I want to cook dinner every night for my husband? Sure, I love to cook sometimes. I love my husband. It doesn't mean I don't love him just because I'm not cooking dinner for him. What it means is that I'm honoring my own energy resources and my own desires. And if I don't feel like cooking dinner, that's okay. It's not that it's me not loving him, it's me just honoring myself. And if someone was cooking dinner for me, I definitely would want them to be doing it from a loving, giving place and not like a resentful place of, oh, I just have to do it, so that type of thing. So anyway, all this to say, I'm sure if you all are on this journey of the Sinclair method or whatever method you're using to kind of improve your relationship to alcohol or abuse it less, relationships are definitely a huge thing that change because there is this expectation of this person that we've been when we're dependent on a substance. And as we start to change that relationship with the alcohol, everything else changes. And we kind of have to be conscious and aware and make these shifts in our relationship in order to honor ourselves. Or else, we're going to be so uncomfortable. And like it could even continue to drive us to drink just because we're so out of integrity with relationships that, oh, like this is so uncomfortable. I just want to numb it out. And so, yeah, I hope this was helpful. If you've had experience with relationships changing in your recovery journey, please put a comment below. I'm super curious to hear how that's been for you all. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.